Hello, and welcome to my live stream about hyperfixations, also known as special interests. Um, so, yes, good morning, evening, afternoon, everybody. Nice way to cover all bases. Um, is these sort of things, special interest hyperfixations, it's actually one of the common traits between autism and ADHD. I hear there are many similarities between autism and ADHD, and um, yeah, special interest is certainly one of them. It's fairly common for autistics to have hyperfixations, but not all of us do. It is possible to be autistic and never have a hyperfixation, as far as I am aware. If I'm wrong, you correct me. Um, it's just everything I've read with diagnosing autism is about there are certain behaviors they look for, certain traits, and you don't have to have every single one. It's just you have to meet a certain criteria. But it seems that some of us hold on to hyperfixations for years or even our entire lives. And some of us jump from hyperfixation to hyperfixation. For me, I jump from one to another. I've had some that have lasted years, and I've had ones that have lasted days. I remember one time when I was still in college, my partner was away at a practicum there, in teacher's college. And when you're a teacher's college, you have to basically be a teaching assistant at a school, and that's your practicum. And I had come across a live action series called The 10th Kingdom. I don't remember what year it came out. Let me just quickly look it up. It's a really, really good show. Let me see. I really enjoyed it. Year 2000. Wow. Okay, it's 20 years old now. Oh my gosh. That was 20 years ago. Um, but yeah, it was when I watched it, it had already been out for a while. It was definitely not new when I watched it. But um, yeah, it's a mini series with 5 2-hour episodes. And it's like got a fairy tale world, stuff like that. It's like this girl and her dad get stuck in a fairy tale world and all this stuff. It's a really good show. I recommend it, again, called 10th Kingdom. And I started watching it one evening. Um, and after one episode, I went to bed since I had classes the next day. I literally could not get back to sleep. I had to watch one more episode. And then after that episode, I had to watch another. And then another. In the end, I binge watched the entire series that night. By the time I was done, it was morning. I didn't end up going to class that day. But yeah, it was just like I had this hyperfixation, and I was hyperfixated on a few days, especially that one night. Salute. To me, I've had them since always, but they come in cycles. Go back, come back. Yeah, that's similar to me. I've had some where I'll be hyperfixating on them for a while, and then I'll stop, and then I'll go back, and then I'll stop, and then I'll go back and stop. It's I go back every once in a while. Um, but yeah, the intensity of my hyperfixation to the 10th Kingdom not only prevented me from falling asleep, but it kept me up all night without caffeine. So, just so I could finish watching it. But I fell asleep after. I was pretty tired after, but it was like while watching it, I didn't feel tired. I was fine. And honestly, I have absolutely no control over what I hyperfixate on or the intensity of it. And from what I understand, most, if not all of us, can't control it. There have been times where I'm pretty confused as to what I get attached to. There was one time my partner worked in Japan for 3 years, and I stayed in Canada. During the first year, I lived alone, and I visited them for, what was it, 2 months?
First time was 2 months. Second time was about 1 month, and the last time was 2.5, 3 weeks.
Yeah, okay. So it was 2 months I visited them. I had friends take care of my cats. Don't worry, they were fine. Um, um, but yeah, so I stayed in Canada. After I went back to Canada after that 2 month visit, um, sorry, I came home and I fell into a deep depression. For some reason, during that depression, I became obsessed with the Winx Club. The first time it came out, I was 18. And I tried watching it, but I really couldn't get into it. I don't know if it was because it was dubbed by 4Kids. Again, I'm bringing up 4Kids. Or, yeah. But I ended up watching there was a second English dub done by, I think the company's name is Rai or Ray. It's RAI. So I watched that one instead of the one for 4Kids. And I liked it. I liked it a lot better. And I binge watched it for like 6 seasons of it before the hyperfixation faded. I made original characters, I drew them, scenarios, everything. If I could write, I probably would have written fan fiction. And before anyone asks, yes, I have seen the promo of the live action Winx series coming out on Netflix. I'll probably check it out. But after seeing the promo, it doesn't look super interesting. Like, where's Tekna? She was my favorite character. And why does it look so dreary? I'm hoping it's better than it looks, but I'm not holding my breath. A lot of people have been saying that it's like, oh, it just looks like the new live action Sabrina, which I haven't seen. But either way, Colleen, I you say that for you it's getting worse. Like, as you get older, they get worse. I would say I'm kind of the same because while my hyperfixations don't last as long, they are way more intense now than when I was a child. Like, I was obsessed when I was a child, but now it's like so much more. But yeah, I still have no idea why I just suddenly became obsessed with Winx Club. It just came out of nowhere. One thing that sort of inspired my one comic saying, don't make fun of people who have strange hobbies, they might be autistic, was a post on Tumblr explaining that autistic people and people with ADHD can't control what they become interested in. And while that is true, you shouldn't make fun of people for their hobbies, even if they're neurotypical. Even if they can completely control what they're obsessed with, don't make fun of them. Oh, sorry, my shoulder. As to why we hyperfixate, it seems to be a form of stress relief. I know during 2020 they've helped me stay sane, like the Netflix series She-Ra, the like Star Wars Clone Wars show, the new Animal Crossing game, which I'm getting close to having played 300 days straight. Uh, they helped me through this. In the spring and summertime this year, my hyperfixation was with She-Ra. Really helped me escape the stresses of just everything. Hi, Kenneth. Um, Fanfics, fan art, fan speculation posts that were several paragraphs long, making original characters, original stories. It was a form of escapism. I feel like part of why my anxiety shot up was because I no longer had a hyperfixation. Right now, I don't have one, and it really sucks. I've been hoping that I'd latch on to other shows I've been watching, like been watching the Tales of Arcadia series, not done, still working through Wizards. Kipo and the Age of Wonder Beasts. Haven't watched the third season yet. Gonna get to it. Owl House. I've really enjoyed them. They're really good shows, but I'm not hyperfixating. I'm not latching on to anything. And honestly, I feel kind of lost. I'm wandering between my old hyperfixations, trying to make one of them stick again. And it's just not working. That time period between when I'm between hyperfixations, it feels so hollow. It feels like working on anything to do with my comic is the only thing that keeps me from sitting around and sinking into the doldrums. I remember before I started my comic, if I was between hyperfixations, I would just sort of stare at my video games or DVDs or VHSs, if that's what I had when I was a kid, and just be like, do I feel like playing this? No. What about this? Watching this? No. Well, what about this? No. This. It's like wandering through an endless fog. And I try and boot up games and play a little and just be like, meh, can't do this. Try and watch something and like stop, 5 minutes in and be like, I've lost interest. I think a person's hyperfixation depends on what they need to be calm. For me, I usually hyperfixate on shows or movies or video games. And I think it's because I want to hide away in a story. Not really with books because I'm a very slow reader. So I don't really get into books. Also, I'm more of a visual person. I like the visuals. But yeah, with stories comes headcanons and original characters or OCs. I can take that story and make my own that I have full control over. I'm safe. I can be whoever I want to be in a fantastical world filled with characters that I love. It may be that people who need order will hyperfixate on something that gives them the order they crave. People who want to build will hyperfixate on something that lets them build. For people who have the same hyperfixation all their lives, it may be that it fulfills what they need through all stages of life. When I was a kid, I held on to hyperfixations much longer, like I was saying. Because my life didn't really change much. I lived in the same house for 17 years, had the same friends, same schools, same everything. I grew up in a tiny town. Well, relatively speaking. When I moved there, I think most of my life, it was like 14,000 plus people. I don't know what it's at now. I think it's still less like 20,000 people, but like you can walk from one end to the other in like half an hour. It's a very small town. It wasn't until I was 19 and moved out of my dad's place into a completely different town that I had real change in my life. Suddenly I had to take care of myself. my dad always took care of everything. So suddenly I had to wash my own clothes. I had to cook for myself. I had to do all this stuff. Because, well, I was the baby, so everybody did stuff for me. Um, but yeah, is through most of my childhood, my hyperfixation was Sailor Moon. My mom used to joke that she had 5 kids: my 3 older siblings, me, and Sailor Moon. In my early teen years, I started getting multiple hyperfixations. The big one became Final Fantasy VII. Oh my gosh, did that become a hyperfixation? But Sailor Moon was still there. Thank you, Dad. Tilsonburg uh is now at 15,500. Thank you. Uh, by the way, hi, Dad. But yeah, even though I was latched on Final Fantasy VII, Sailor Moon was still one of my main hyperfixations. Um, I'd find bootleg VHSs and DVDs of the original Japanese with English subtitles. This was like 15, 20 years ago, so long before they were available online. Like, we had to go to like, yeah, Alan Scoville, that is my dad. But yeah, we'd have to go to a different town, all that. Just try and find tapes and DVDs. It was crazy. I remember one day baking cookies and just binge watching the 3rd season of Sailor Moon. That's the one when Sailor Neptune and Uranus and Saturn first show up. That's my absolute favorite season. Like, no word of a lie. But when I left home, my hyperfixation started hopping from one to the other because my life was a lot more stressful. What I needed to make me feel safe was constantly changing. In my last live stream, I talked about hyperfixating on Digimon Adventure 02 during a time when I was in a really bad living situation. Once I was out of that living situation, my hyperfixation changed. What I needed changed. One thing that some people don't really realize is that an autistic's hyperfixation is very different from a neurotypical's hobby or interest. Oh, Melinda, you made a Sailor Moon fan website? That is so cool. But yeah, the big thing that makes a neurotypical's hobby or interest different from an autistic's hyperfixation is the intensity of the interest. When a neurotypical has an interest, it's something that, although has their interest, they can put down. They can put it aside and move to other tasks. They can think about other things. When autistic is hyperfixating, we can't always do that. I know for me, when I'm hyperfixating on something, it's constantly on my mind. I could be hanging out with friends and still be thinking about it. I could be watching something else and still be thinking about it. You know, I can't stop it.
Indeed. On that note, from a neurotypical perspective, I have come somewhat close to hyperfixations, but there is that key difference is the intensity. For example, when I lived in Japan for basically 3 years straight, almost every single day that I was actually at home, I would play Destiny. Almost every day. But the difference was when I went to work, even though I would be thinking about it, I could separate myself and get to work teaching as I had to there. Or I sometimes would go over and play a different game, like Dark Souls, so I would pair the two. Admittedly, I played both of them all the time. But the intensity difference is noticeable at least from an outside perspective, when it comes into being. Uh, when I get hooked on something, it's big, but it is not as all consuming. I can set it aside. And even if it looks like I have the same depth because I get home and I immediately jump onto my game console to play a game, or I immediately pick up a book, it ends. Or I can step away from it and do other things, and it doesn't force itself to be always in my consciousness. And that's the major difference I've seen from myself and Teresa.
Thank you. Now, another difference between, autistics and neurotypicals is, control. Autistics have no control over what the interest will be, nor the intensity of it. Hyperfixations, as said, can be all-consuming. They can take over our lives. Some may say that when a hyperfixation starts impeding on someone's life, it needs to be stopped. And, well, yes, if it's impeding on someone's life, it does. But I think what needs to be asked is, why is the hyperfixation so intense? It could be a situation of the person being so stressed that they can't deal with the real world right now. They could be too scared to exist in reality for some reason. And it may be better to find out what that reason is and find a way to deal with it. Make it so the person doesn't constantly feel like they need to escape. Why was I so obsessed with Digimon Adventure 2 when I was living in a bad situation? Because I was incredibly stressed. Why was I obsessed with Winx Club when I got back home after visiting my partner in Japan? Because I was severely depressed. The reason my hyperfixation with Winx Club stopped was because two of my best friends started helping me get out of my depression. One of them invited me to the D&D game she was running and would invite me over to watch anime. I eventually moved in with her. The other would sleep over at my place for a few days. We'd play video games together and watch our favorite shows while eating cheap pizza. I remember we beat Borderlands 2 together, and there's like a D&D sort of knockoff DLC with that, and we stayed up until like 2 a.m. trying to beat that. But yeah, these two, they help pull me out of my depression. So I didn't need my Winx Club hyperfixation anymore. And again, another difference. Our interests aren't just fun things we do to pass the time. I know they're coping mechanisms. I know, neurotypical people, they spend time on their interests not just because it's fun, because it is a de-stressor. But it's not as much of a coping mechanism, I don't feel. For us, they help us stay sane in this world. They help us escape when everything is just too much. Now, there are ways that hyperfixations can be harmful. I will say that. A hyperfixation that harms you physically or emotionally or harms someone else. One example of a harmful fixation that I'm sure plenty of you have heard of is a hyperfixation on a real living person. This happens a lot with celebrities and now actually like famous YouTubers and online content creators. This can cause stalking, whether in real life or cyber stalking, harassment. Actually, there's one comic creator that I follow online who had to change their legal name because of stalking and harassment. And that idea is just scary. I've also had a friend who's been the subject of hyperfixation. And they, it was, yeah, it was scary. Um, Stalking and harassing people can do massive harm and end with the one hyperfixating ending up in jail. Another harmful hyperfixation could be one related to a trauma that you've gone through. And maybe that you're trying to work through something, but constantly triggering your trauma probably isn't the best way to go about it. You know, it's like if you almost died in a car crash and that traumatized you, and now you're obsessed with car crashes. When it comes to that, I suggest you talk to someone about it, whether it be a professional or just someone you trust. There's something causing you to hyperfixate on a trauma, and it needs to be worked out in as healthy of a manner as possible. Then, as I sort of touched on before, there are hyperfixations that take up so much of your time that takes a tremendous toll on your life. Well, Finos, hyperfixations on people are kind of creepy. I know that sounds bad. That doesn't sound like saying that they're kind of creepy. I'd have to kind of agree with you. Like, I've been hyperfixated on characters played by actors, and then I'll go and check out other things that they've been in. But, see ya, Kenneth. But I never, like, find out where they live. I never find out about their life. I never look up, like, their kids or their spouse or whatever. It's just sort of, I really like watching their work. But, yeah, is when you actually hyperfixate on the person themselves and, like, stalk and harass this person, that is creepy. But yeah, as I was saying, hyperfixations that take up so much of your time. They could cause you to lose relationships that you really valued, or it can be really damaging to your grades, or it can cause your health or the health of a dependent, say a child or pet, to suffer. Oh, excuse me. A hyperfixation that you can't pull away from, even when you want to, that's a situation where, as stated before, there may be outside sources causing you so much stress that, you know, you constantly need to lose yourself in your hyperfixation. And I feel that in that case, the stress needs to be dealt with or managed in a more healthy way if your life or the life of another is being harmed by your neglect. So yeah, there are such things as harmful hyperfixations, but I feel so long as no one is getting hurt, then no one should try and take your hyperfixation away from you. But yeah, the fact that hyperfixations help us so much makes it hurt so much when I read about, like, therapies and methods to break someone of their hyperfixation. I've had hyperfixations ruined for me, and it hurts so much. In my case, it's never been intentional, so I can't be too upset with the people who did it. But for those who intentionally do it, it really disturbs me. I've read of hyperfixations being used as rewards for good behavior, like, oh, if you do this, you can, you know, play with your train, you can watch your show, you could do this, you can do that. And Now, I understand it's sort of like, oh, if you do your homework, you can go play video games, but that is so you get your homework done. For this is sort of like trying to, just sort of like, I want you to behave in a certain way, so I'm going to dangle your hyperfixation in front of you. And that just screams of ABA to me. I remember reading up on ABA for one of my comics and finding out that one of the methods that's used is in ABA is denying affection or even food to autistic children who don't perform properly. And I use the word perform because that's all it is. ABA does nothing but teach the child how to perform. And denying someone their hyperfixation so that they will perform in a manner that you like sounds like something that would be used in ABA. Taking someone's coping mechanism away like that is just plain cruel. This is why more information needs to be out there about hyperfixations, because I know people who try to stop us from hyperfixating see the act of hyperfixating as something bad, when it's usually not. So often, especially in like media, they view obsessions as harmful because so often they only show harmful obsessions. So when people see us hyperfixating, the word obsession comes to their mind and suddenly it's bad. It's I don't know, it's sort of like it's okay for someone to be super obsessed with a sports team, but it's not okay for an autistic to be super obsessed with physics or something. Well, usually people are okay with an obsession with physics, but you know what? If it's a hyperfixation that cannot be exploited for labor, like my obsession with shows, it's seen as a bad thing, I find. If somebody's obsessed with, or like video games or anime, it's sort of like, if someone's obsessed with, like, music, oh, let's work on improving that. But it's like, oh, I'm obsessed with, video games. Oh, that's a bad obsession, because you can make money off of the labor of someone who's obsessed with music. Can't exactly do that with video games, except for like video game testers, I guess, but yeah. But when people try and break us of our hyperfixations, they think they're helping when they're actually hurting. More and more information is getting out there, but we need to keep going. So Lou, you have a hyperfixation on snails? Snails are adorable. To prepare for this live stream, as I do with a lot of my live streams, oh, Justin, yeah, my parents and siblings constantly berated me on my obsession with JoJo. I still need to watch JoJo. I've heard so many good things about it. I've heard it's really good, and I think it's a good thing to hyperfixate on. I'm just going to say that. I've seen screenshots and art, and it looks incredible, and it looks very strange, which is up my alley. But yeah, for every live stream, I always do research. And I found this one study by the National Center for Biotechnology Information, or the NCIB, which is part of the United States National Library of Medicine. The study showed the differences between neurotypical kids versus autistic kids, and the intensity of the interest. They only had kids and young adults in this study, which is pretty typical, but some of the information found was still really neat. certain interesting things that came up in the study were that gender and age did nothing to help predict the number of interests nor the intensity of interest in autistic kids. It's not like as we got older, we got less interests. And it's not like as we got older, our interests became less intensified. They are. Yeah, it was a world to me. Sorry, I get that pun. I know enough about JoJo to get the stand and the world and puns. Um, but yeah, while neurotypical people tend to have many interests as a kid, but seem to focus that down to just few interests when they're adults, that doesn't seem to happen with autistics. Another thing that was interesting was this study hypothesized that autistics, while having more intense interests in subjects than neurotypicals, have a smaller number of interests, and their findings were only half right. While we autistics are more intense in our interests, the number of interests we have weren't very different from neurotypicals. Well, Fenos, I want any kind of pun. What was also found was that autistics are more likely to have interest in things like information, playing games solo, collecting things, cartoons, which, yeah, that's definitely me, video games, cartoons, specific objects, and sensory-seeking activities. While neurotypicals were more interested in more, like, social interests, like people and sports. I want a pizza pun. It would be too cheesy. But yeah, autistics are more likely to be interested in less social interests than neurotypicals, which isn't too much of a shock. However, when it came to things such as like computers, math, and building things, animals, and certain sciences like astronomy, psychiatry, and geology, both autistics and neurotypicals had similar likeliness to have them as interests, which I find pretty interesting because there's a common stereotype that autistics are more likely to get into things like computers and math and science than neurotypicals. But this study seems to debunk that myth. The study also showed what I had suggested earlier. The greater the stress in the autistic person's life, the more intense the interest. One big thing, though, that I didn't like about this study, however, was at the end, they talked about using this information to help curb the intensity of special interests as a tool for early intervention against executive dysfunction. Well, helping with executive dysfunction is all fine and dandy. Our hyperfixations aren't usually what causes executive dysfunction. It's usually outside stresses. Hyperfixation is just our way of coping. This was done back in 2013, and the DSM-5 had just come out. The study even made references to the DSM-4. So it's out of date. It also focuses on, like, IQ and uses language like high-functioning autistic, which I'm not a big fan of. We've made a lot of headway since this was published. It's been 7 years. But, sorry, I'm just reading all the puns.
I will not apologize.
I will say that my love for puns came from my dad. So thank you, Dad, for both the autism and the love of puns. I very much appreciate it. Also part of what attracted me to my partner was their love of puns. But yeah, we made a lot of headway since this was published, but I'm curious if the people who ran the study still feel the need to intervene with hyperfixations. I'll leave the link to it in the description if you want to check it out. So yeah. Um, One thing that I find so important about us having our hyperfixations is that for some of us, it's how we connect to others. When I was still a kid, most of my friends I made were through a shared interest in like anime and video games and stuff like that. Um, Sebastian, I think that executive dysfunction and hyperfixations might be related, but hyperfixations rather are a symptom of executive dysfunction than the cause. Yes, I agree with you. I very much agree with you. Thank you for that comment. Um, but yeah, in fact, it's because of my hyperfixations on um, anime and cosplay that I met my partner. We met at a cosplay picnic on Toronto Island. Um, I was part of a cosplay group, and we were all dressed up as characters from um, Black Butler, and my partner was our photographer. I remember they spent the entire time complimenting my cosplay, and I didn't even realize that they were flirting with me. I was like, wow, they must really like my cosplay. La 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 la. Eventually, I had a friend tell me that they had been flirting with me. I ended up being the one asking them out because I'm like, oh, they like me? Oh, hey, do you want a date? Needless to say, I was a bit shocked, but happy as well. And for anyone who has seen Black Butler, I was dressed up as the Butler version of Grell before they revealed themselves to be the Grim Reaper. So this before they were all like covered in red with red hair and stuff like that, and had the sharp teeth. Um, I'm made a lot of friends through my hyperfixations on things like LARP and My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. However, many friendships have been formed at, like, how many friendships have been formed at conventions or online because of hyperfixations on games and fandoms? How many friendships have been made through WoW, like World of Warcraft, or Magic the Gathering? I know my partner's made friends through Magic the Gathering. For some of us, our hyperfixations are our only way of connecting to other people. Um, yeah, is there. Not everybody is going to share your special interests, sadly, you know. Not everyone is going to be able to make friends through their hyperfixations, sadly. But for some of us, it is. Um, you know, we aren't exactly known for our prowess when it comes to dealing with social situations, so just sometimes just having that jumping off point. Yes, don't go to conventions right now. Please. If there is a convention being run, don't go to it, please. Um, oh, Justin, especially at a young age where no one liked Nintendo like I did. Yeah, I was very much into video games and like um growing up like as a girl, liking video games and anime was like a bad thing because I grew up in the 90s. You know, I was born in the 1986. So yeah, growing up in the 90s. Why do my neighbors constantly slam their door? So it's sort of like even if there were people who were huge fans of video games and stuff, it was like for some of them, they would say I'm just the wrong gender and wouldn't want to be friends with me, but I was lucky. Um but for me, if I'm stuck in a social situation where I don't know anyone, I'm going to clam up. Absolutely. I remember going to this one thing in college where we're supposed to make like connections, and I sat there the entire time just staring at everyone, terrified. Um, I was just too scared to make the first move and just talk with someone. But if I hear someone talking about one of my hyperfixations, um, all that fear goes away. And I just start talking. It's like word vomit, just not stopping. Um, Not to mention that for some of us, hyperfixations can lead to careers. I started drawing because of my hyperfixations. And now I draw my comic. I started with drawing Jessica Rabbit from Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and then Ariel from Little Mermaid, and then Sailor Moon when it started airing in Canada in 1995, and all the other sailors. Um, oh, Melinda! I'm 1986 and grew up playing video games and watching anime. Oh, that's so awesome! Where have you been in my life? Oh, my fixations isolated me from classmates. No one else likes Star Trek. Yeah. Yeah, it was tough for people who like Star Trek. Science fiction and stuff like that. It wasn't until recently that anything nerdy was really, yeah. But yeah, if it wasn't for my hyperfixations in cartoons and cartoon characters, I may not have fallen in love with drawing as much as I have. And without my love of drawing, would I have even started my comic? Um, yeah, Sailor Moon was awesome. Is awesome. My hope is that the more that's learned about us autistics and hyperfixations, the less flack we'll get for having them. I'm so happy that anime and video games and nerdy stuff like Star Trek, Star Wars, and all that stuff is becoming more mainstream. Because when, as I said, like growing up, if you like either of those things, you were horribly mocked, especially if you were a girl. I was so lucky that I found other nerdy friends because things could have turned out very differently. Um, See, Justin, third grade you wasn't wrong. Yeah, books are cool, but Meta Knight is cooler. Like, just no, you just can't compare the two. Meta Knight is just too cool. Um, Honestly, I'm glad that nerd culture as a whole is becoming more accepted because it makes it easier for autistics whose hyperfixations are in nerd culture. It makes it easier to make friends, to make lifelong connections. There are gatekeepers out there who are upset that nerd culture is becoming more mainstream and will tell you that you're not a real gamer unless you play certain genres of games, or you're not a true anime fan unless you watch specific series. There are people who say that you're not a true Star Wars fan if you only watch the movies. I know that when I meet Star Wars fans who have only seen the movies, I will go on and on about Clone Wars and highly recommend it to them. But I'm not going to berate them for not having watched it. They're still Star Wars fans. You know, gatekeepers bug me so much. Now, before I thank my patrons and say my goodbyes, I just want to say a few things. This is going to be my last stream for the year. I'm going to be taking a 2-week break from it. I'm not going to be taking a break from posting my comic, though. But I am from streaming. And before I end this stream, I just want to wish you all happy holidays, whatever holiday you celebrate, and a happy new year. This year has been really tough for everyone, and my sincerest condolences to anyone who's lost a loved one. I'm so sorry. I know for me, making my comic has been one of the few things that have kept me moving forward. There have been days where I just don't want to get out of bed. And I'm sure most of you know that feeling. But I keep getting out of bed every morning because I want to make sure that there are comics made and ready to be shared with all of you. My comic has grown so much this year, and I can't thank all of you enough. I've gotten so many wonderful comments and messages, especially during my 2.5 week break. Just knowing that I have so many supportive fans who just wanted me to take care of myself is so heartwarming. When I started making this comic, I did it just for me. It was a hobby. And I still do that. It's still for me, but it's not just for me anymore. It's for all of you. To think that this community has been built up around something that I've made, and not just any community, but such a wholesome community, is more than I ever could have imagined. At the beginning of this year, I just reached 2,000 followers on both Facebook and Instagram. Now I have over 9,000 on Facebook and over 7,000 on Instagram, which absolutely blows my mind. This is the year my comics started catching traction on Twitter. I'm kind of annoyed it took so long, but oh well. My Patreon had an incredible jump, and I just, it's so much. And of course, this is the year that I started this live stream. I may be the one making these comics, but you all are the ones making it grow. I can't thank you enough. My hopes for next year is finally getting a merch shop up and running. I'll probably be going through Teespring, so it'll be things like stickers and mugs and possibly shirts. We shall see. Anyways, let's hope 2021 treats us better than 2020, which isn't exactly a very high bar to reach. Personally, I'm just hoping that I can visit Canada in the summer. Enjoy your Napsaloo. My partner and I haven't seen our families and Canadian friends in person for about 1.5 years. Skype is nice, stuff like that. But it's not the same. So here's hoping vaccine is all good. And so hopefully things will improve. Yes, well, Fenno's first rule of 2021, never talk about 2020. So yeah. Thanking patron time. Again, of course, thanking my dad, who's popped into the chat for a sec. So thank you for your support, as always, all through my life. Thank you for helping me getting all those bootleg Sailor Moon DVDs. Not DVDs, they were the VHSs. We had to drive to a different town to get them, and I appreciate that. Big thank you to Dominic, who's second newest $10 patron. Big thank you. I really appreciate it. Big thank you to my newest $10 patron, who actually became a $10 patron midway through last live stream, Nick. Thank you very, very much. I very much appreciate it. It's amazing to have you all here, supporting me financially. Yeah. And of course, all my other patrons. The fact that you you're willing to support me. Um, you know, it means a lot to me, and I just want to thank you all so much. Um, like I said, I'm going to keep posting comics. I'm hoping to have a special one out on December 25th. I know not everybody celebrates Christmas, but I do, so I will be posting it December 25th, Christmas. And oh my goodness, I'm tired. I usually go to bed soon. But yeah, thank you so much. For everything you all have done. You know, I get a lot of thanks, but you all deserve thanks as well. You really do. Thank you to those of you who show up to like every live stream. You know who you are. And thank you to those of you who don't make it to every live stream. Thank you to those who are going to watch this after live stream is done, who never show up to a live stream. Thank you. It's, you know, I've been enjoying doing these live streams. Like, I did the 2-year anniversary live stream just to see, just to see how I did, if I'd be a ball of nerves or not. And I was, but I still enjoyed it. So, yeah. In January, I will post a January schedule. And, yeah. Let's keep moving forward. And hopefully make the world a better place. I know, you know, I make my comic to try and educate people more on autism. And it's just sort of like, a big thing is, just trying to make autistic lives easier. Hey, trying to show up is big to me. So anyways, sorry, I'm getting kind of emotional, so it's like words, what be words. I think in pictures, not in words. That's why I have to write a script. I didn't before, and it was a disaster. But yes. Anyways, yes. Farewell for now. Happy holidays. And, Happy New Year. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm gonna go to bed soon. Good for you, Justin. Making a project on Autism Speaks. It's important information to get out there. But, ciao for now.